Hey everybody, welcome back to week 3 of our series Goals. I'm Bryson, I'm a student leader at Raeford site, so a little shout out to all those people that are probably not watching because the student leader is actually preaching, but hey, it's good to see every one of you. So these past couple weeks, we've been going over how we can form and achieve God-sized goals. So in the first week, we have Sam, who was teaching us how God-sized goals usually come from God-sized difficulties. And then in the second week, Mackenzie was talking about how all of us are actually made to or designed to achieve God-sized goals. So we've been doing all of this while going over the story of Nehemiah. Nehemiah has this crazy charge to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. And that is, I'm telling you, that's daunting. I've never been told that I had to build a wall, but I know that it is definitely a big task. Now, however, I did actually have to build a fence one time. This was a really big event for me because I just moved jobs and I was building a fence for my parents. And I know this may seem like, okay, Bryson, what are you talking about? There's a wall. How are you gonna apply that to a fence? Well, it was a little bit different. So I had to build this fence. It was like 75 yards long. It was 8 feet tall. I had to tear down an old one and then start another one. And I realized, this is something that I've never really done before. I've helped some other people do this, and I worked in that construction job, so I thought, how am I going to achieve this? And it was daunting at first, but with a little bit of help from other people, with a little bit of trial and error, I was able to kind of come about and finally finish this fence. And there was such a big process, and throughout this message, I'm really going to apply this back, so maybe you guys can get a better understanding of a real life scenario where this could be going on. So let's go back to Nehemiah, and I'm assuming all of you guys are actually following along on your Bible, so I'm going to be kind of reading through all of this. But first, I know when we're achieving these God-sized goals, when we're pursuing all this, there's this one statement that seems to always come up, and when you talk to people about it, is this question to God saying, God, I don't think I have the strength to do this. I don't think I can manage it. I don't think I can really achieve this. I don't have enough in me. And this is one of those that I've never met anyone who's achieving a big goal that hasn't at some point said that to the Lord. But there's one incredible truth that all of you guys really need to know, and what this is all about is that God really gives you the strength to achieve God-sized goals. So let's look at Nehemiah chapter 3. So this chapter, I know it may seem a little bit dull, but it contains a full list of all the people and people groups that actually helped Nehemiah build this wall. And I would read you a verse out of this, but I'll be honest, you probably wouldn't understand it because I barely did myself. But it's okay. So if we see in verse 6 through 11, I noticed that there's at least 9 different builders and people groups that all help Nehemiah. And it lists the sections that they're building off and gates that they're a part of that they're all about building. Now, you may be looking at it and thinking, what am I supposed to get from this? Why is this in the Bible? But if you notice what I said, 9 people and people groups. So not only like these 9 builders, but people that supported those builders that did that. So we're talking tons of people that helped Nehemiah. So I want you to always remember that people. I'll swing back around to that later, but remember there was a lot of people listed in here just from those 5 verses, that there was a lot of people that were helping them out. So we see this wall is being built. So we look, and in chapter 4, after we get past the relaying of how they're building it, things get a little bit rocky. So I'm going to start in verse 1 of chapter 4. I expect all of you guys to be looking there. To read in chapter 1 through 5. So now, when Sanballat heard, and Sanballat is a leader in Samaria, heard that they were rebuilding the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. And he said, in the presence of his brothers and the army of Samaria, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish and burns one at that? And then Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him and said, yes, what they are building, if a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall. Then Nehemiah says, hear, O God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads and give them up to be plundered in a land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt, and let not their sin be blotted out from your sight, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders. Now, I don't know if you caught that, so I'm going to translate this into what they're saying. Are they really doing this? Are they really trying to build this wall? And then him to the side even taunting the Jews, saying, yeah, if even a fox, this small animal, runs over it, it's going to break. They're taunting and just saying these awful things to the Jews. And I know for me, it's as if I was building this fence and I was just putting it up and I'm just trying my hardest and working and sweating. If somebody came over and said, is he really trying to do that? Is he really trying to do that himself? Does he really think that he's gonna be able to do it? And that fence looks weak. Why would he do that? But what's important is that they were beginning to achieve this goal. They were making progress, and as they were reaching that progress, they were starting to get opposition. They were starting to get discouragement. And unfortunately, all of this opposition actually started to discourage the Jews, which is understandable, but they started to get that feeling of, man, what are we doing? Because this was in the presence of them. The Jews can hear them as they're calling out and they're being opposed. But Nehemiah stood up, and as their leader, he stood up to all these builders, all these people that he partnered with, and said, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. This bold statement plunges them back into work. And for the rest of the chapter, we actually see that they go on and taking swords in one hand and building tools in the other, they started to complete this wall and they started to achieve this task. And I really admire how they continued, even despite this opposition and overall this encouragement by Nehemiah that he had. So all of us have goals, whether that be in sports, lifestyle changes, grades, or literally anything. It could be something small, it could be something big, it could be building a fence, it could be just doing 50 push-ups at one time. I know as your leader, it might be just my job, and you might be expecting me to say, you know what, your job is just to grit your teeth and go through it. Don't be afraid, don't do all these things. You shouldn't have these feelings, just go forward. But the truth is, this stuff is hard, and it's okay to feel weak, it's feel discouraged, and to get all those feelings. But what's really important is that you actually don't stop there and say, you know what, God, I'm struggling with these things. I'm going to take it. I don't have the strength. I'm kind of running out of this. So ultimately, how can we really receive that strength that God has for us to achieve those sorts of goals? Well, I'm going to tell you in about 5 points, and they're all very simple and very easy to just apply. So number one, the way to get strength to achieve these God-sized goals is take it to God. You see in Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 4, where he took it to God immediately. He got this charge, this goal, and he said, Lord, and just submitted it to him. So with you guys, all that same thing, when you feel that goal that you really, really want to achieve, just say, God, I want this to be yours. I want to hand all of my strength. I want to hand out right out the gate. This is not mine. I want to give it to you. And then secondly, choose community. Now, if you remember back in this first sort of area, I talked about in chapter 3 that there was a lot of people involved. Nehemiah could not do that alone. I mean, there's no way that you can build this giant wall around Jerusalem by himself, so he partnered with a bunch of other people. That's exactly what you should do. The cool thing about me building that fence was, in the end, I thought I really had to do it alone. I was getting paid to do it. I was getting paid by my parents to do it. I was like, well, I have to do this alone. But what made me successful was calling people for help, for calling my parents who were just inside and being like, hey, can you help me move this? I really can't do this. Each of you guys has family, friends, coworkers at maybe wherever you guys go, or people at church that's willing to help you and help you achieve those goals. So really take control of that and utilize those people that just love you and want you to succeed. So number 2 is choose community. And remember, first one was take it to God. Number 2, choose community. And number 3, rest. Now imagine if I tried when I was building that fence, or let's just say your goal is to do 50 push-ups in one sitting. Imagine if you just basically did those push-ups and then stopped at 10, like, oh man, I gotta start over, and just immediately tried to go back at it and go back at it. Or you're trying to study and you never sleep. What if these are all things you're trying to accomplish and you never rest? Well, what you're gonna do is you're gonna burn out and you're gonna pass out. You're going to start not performing very well and you're not gonna achieve it. So prioritize rest. Ultimately, God is where we find our rest, where we can lay down and say, Lord, really provide me with that rest. So prioritize that. Take a breather. Take a moment to say, you know what? I just need a second so I can push on with this task. So number 3 is rest. Number 4, don't get distracted. This is what this message was really bringing home, was distracted by people that are trying to tear you down, distracted by other things that may seem more fun. If you have something in your mind and you feel like God has put something on your heart, don't get distracted by little things. Especially if God put it on your heart, you have to think, what is more important than that? Don't get distracted by people saying you're not gonna make it. If you're trying to achieve better grades and people say, you know what, you're not smart. If they're trying to tell you, hey, you're not capable of doing this, and they're trying to distract you and get you off the path, you know that you have something in mind, so go after it. Be okay with that. So number 4, don't get distracted. And number 5, just keep going. And I know this goes a little bit against what I said before this, where I say just grit your teeth and go forward, but there is to a degree where we have to walk out in faith. And you have to say God, I know that I cannot keep going, but I know by your strength, I can keep going. So in that, when you feel as though, I just got nothing left, just move forward, push a little bit harder, push a little bit forward, because God is wanting to strengthen you and to walk in faith. So ultimately, for each of you watching this video, I know you're facing something. I know you have something in mind. It can be something very small. It can be something very big. Ultimately, God is going to give you that strength to achieve these goals. If you kind of follow these 5 different steps, if you take it to Him, if you don't get distracted, if you embrace community, if you rest, and if you just keep going, and ultimately God will give you the strength to go forward. But I want to leave you with this final verse that Nehemiah actually said when he was dealing with the attacks and the violence and taunting of the Sanballat in those times. So it's found in Nehemiah chapter 6, chapter 6, verse 9. And I really want you to pay attention to this because this is a very powerful verse. He said, "For all they wanted to frighten us, thinking, their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. But now, O God, strengthen my hands." See, the enemy wants to frighten you. If there's enough opposition against you, then you're not going to be able to accomplish it. If he can just put enough against you, if he can just tear you down enough, then you're not going to be able to do it. But that's a lie. Because ultimately, God is here for you. He's here to give you the strength. He's here to help you achieve those goals. So when you are faced with that, say, you know what? I know that my God is with me. I know that I'm going to press forward. So as you go and discuss this in your small groups, or you just review the small group questions, really be able to press into what this is and know that in the challenges that you face, God will give you the strength to achieve your goals.